It is one of the most famous archaeological sites in the Holy Land, which tells the story of the Jewish people during the Second Temple era and after its destruction of it. But Zippori, or Sepphoris, is much more than that. We can see here layer upon layer of different civilizations, from the Iron Age to the Byzantine era.
It was considered to be the capital of the Galilee. It was a wealthy city where Jews and non-Jews lived.
This site, called the Nile House, is built on the typical architectural style of the Roman period. In its center, we can see a beautiful mosaic depicting scenes from the Nile River. Another mosaic features a scene with Amazons, women warriors. But perhaps the most impressive and famous mosaic is found on the top of the hill, in a place known as the Dionysus House.
So we are in the lavatory room of the house here. The fact that there is a lavatory inside the house, again, shows of the wealth of the people who lived here, because the simple people would just, go out to the fields and do what they do. So in here, we see the mosaic, and it says in Greek, Hagia, which means for health. In the center, you see what's known as the drinking competition. Dionysus is competing with Heracles, who can drink more. And you can see in the scene that Dionysus is lifting his cup upside down. He is done, he won, and Heracles is on the floor, drunk, completely wasted. Another thing that you cannot take your eyes out of is the Mona Lisa of Zippori, a beautiful lady that, like the Mona Lisa, no matter where you look at her, it feels like she's looking back at you. The mosaic, the quality is unbelievable. It's made out of 1.5 million stones in 23 different colors, all from natural stones. And the high quality of this mosaic shows the wealth and the importance of the person that lived in this house.
Zippori was perhaps a major urban and economic center for Jews and Romans during the 1st century CE. As opposed to other Jewish cities, Zippori did not take part in the Great Jewish Revolt and therefore survived one of the biggest disasters in Jewish history.
To understand that, we need to go back to the year 4 BCE, the time that King Herod the Great dies. And at this point, a lot of Jews that gathered a lot of hate and anger because of his tyrannic regime start clashes. And clashes start here in Zippori. And in order to put them down, the Roman ruler of Syria, Verus, comes here, puts that revolt down, puts the city on fire, causes terrible damage here, sell the people into slavery. And then about 70 years later, when the Great Revolt starts, we see that they kind of learned their lessons. They're not taking part in it this time.
After the Bar Kokhba revolt of the 2nd century, Zippori continues to flourish. It became the home of the Sanhedrin, the Jewish administrative center. This is where the written collection of Jewish oral tradition, the Mishnah, was signed, and where the great Jewish scholar Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi lived.
And the Mishnah included different discussions between rabbis of hundreds of years, and from all this time, and they discussed different issues like kosher, Shabbat, marriage, holidays. For hundreds of years, it was known as the oral Torah. They would memorize it and pass it from father to child, generation after generation, and they said, we're not going to write it down. We have only one written Torah, and this is the Tanakh, the Jewish Bible, and we don't want it to compete with it. And then comes a point when it's after the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem in the year 70, and the Jews are scattered all over the world, and there's a fear that it might be forgotten. And then Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi sits and writes it down, and from that moment it will become you can say the main textbook of Jewish communities around the world. So we can really see that Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi was a great reformer of the time. He legislated a lot of laws that were very open, very progressive. One interesting example is that we read about it in the Talmud, that he offered to cancel the mourning days of Tisha B'Av and Yud Zayin B'Tammuz, where we are fasting up until today over the destruction of the temple.
Zippori is also significant for Christians. According to late antiquity traditions, this is where Mary, mother of Jesus, was born. Perhaps a key to understanding the connection between Judaism and Christianity is its rituals. One of them is widespread here in Zippori.
Mikveh is a Jewish ritual bath that Jews used to take in order to go through a spiritual transformation. Jews are doing it until today. It can be, the way it looks is a pool with water that comes from a natural source. So it can be rain, it can be a spring, it can be a river. And at that time, it was a very significant thing in the Jewish life. A very famous figure that we hear about is using it. He's using the Jordan River as the mikveh. John the Baptist, or in Hebrew, Yochanan, he is sitting by the Jordan River and he's welcoming all the people that are crossing the Jordan River to get baptized in order to purify themselves, because he's saying, get ready, redemption is coming, the Messiah is coming.
Zippori may look like a place of contradictions, a city where Jews surrendered to the Roman Empire on the one hand, but also where one of the most important Jewish texts was born, where you can find a lavish synagogue next to a Roman compound. This complexity is perhaps a key to understanding the fascinating story of the entire area.